A narrow stage sits at the end of a mess hall. Folding chairs line up in rows. Uniforms fill the room, musicians tune. The K-pop girl group steps into light. They greet the crowd with bright smiles. They launch into the first song. The music cuts through the hush of routine. The soldiers clap. Some stand, some sing along. For many, this night is a rare break. It is a night that feels like home. That is the core purpose of military concerts. They lift morale. They inject a human moment into strict schedules. Training follows rigid routines. Day after day looks the same. A concert interrupts that loop. It pulls attention away from fatigue and boredom. It reminds soldiers of people beyond the base. Music connects to memory. A familiar chorus can bring back a street, a friend, or a family meal. That memory eases tension. Laughter and applause release stress. Shared rhythm creates a shared mood. When soldiers move with music, they feel part of a group. That feeling matters in units where team trust underpins safety and mission success. Concerts express gratitude. They tell troops that the public cares. Leaders sometimes invite artists to show official support. That public message matters to soldiers who serve away from home. It can change how they view their work. It can renew a sense of purpose. Military concerts have history outside K-pop. During past wars, entertainers traveled to camps and front lines. Those shows kept morale steady in hard times. The format moved into peacetime. It adapted to new music styles and media. Today, pop acts bring that practice into modern settings. South Korea places special weight on military concerts. The country has mandatory service for men. Thousands of young men enter the military each year. K-pop is a dominant cultural force. The music and the artists share roots with the audience. Artists grew up in the same schools and cities. Their songs travel with soldiers into training halls. That closeness makes concerts highly valued. Organizers plan these shows carefully. Bases may host small stage shows or larger open-air concerts. The military works with entertainment agencies and broadcasters. Schedules must fit training needs and security rules. For remote outposts, logistics may include special transport and extra security. Staff coordinate sound, lights, and seating. The goal is a smooth night where performers and troops can focus on the music. Artists join for several reasons. They wish to thank fans who serve. They want to show support for the nation. Agencies see these shows as a form of outreach. Artists gain stage experience in unusual settings. They learn to perform for an audience that reacts differently from fans at a club. A military crowd may clap on cue and watch in silence. That test refines timing and presence. Some groups use these concerts to keep ties with fans who serve. Fans who serve as soldiers become a key audience. A simple song can feel like it was meant for them. Artists who take time to visit bases build reputation for care. Fans write letters and send care packages. The exchange creates a loop of support that spans service time. Concerts present a polished image in other countries when foreign troops or journalists attend. They show national music and style. A single performance can turn curiosity into admiration. When the same artist tours other countries, that memory follows. Music becomes a form of influence that avoids politics. Some concerts use full production. Lights, dancers, and pyrotechnics make the show feel like a festival. Other shows stay small and intimate. A group may strip back a song to voice and guitar. That version can touch soldiers in a different way. Simple shows allow conversation between performers and audience. Groups answer questions and read letters. Those moments have strong emotional weight. Picture a company that finished a month of field drills. They meet in a cold hangar. The lights turn on. A girl group performs a pop hit. For the first time in weeks, the soldiers laugh. One soldier calls home. Another starts a chorus. After the show, the group signs posters and talks with the troops. The men go back to their bunks with a lighter mood. In a different scene, a border outpost gets a surprise visit. The base lies near rocky terrain. Soldiers work long hours and have limited leave. The group arrives by convoy. The audience numbers fewer, but the intensity grows. A quiet ballad brings a room to silence. A handshake at the barricade gives the soldier a personal memory. That memory holds through the months of night watches. Music changes brain chemistry. Sound moves the body and mind. A catchy chorus increases dopamine. People feel reward when they sing along. Group applause releases oxytocin, which strengthens bonds. Those chemicals reduce stress and sharpen focus. A concert can reset mood in a way food or rest may not. Beyond mood, concerts build cohesion. Soldiers who share an emotional event form tighter social ties. They recall the night as something they did together. Stories from the show become part of unit lore. That shared memory helps when they face hard training. Some critics say concerts distract from duty or serve as propaganda. Those concerns matter. Organizers must balance entertainment with mission readiness. Bands usually play at times that do not interfere with operations. Leaders use concerts to reward performance or mark milestones. When handled respectfully, the shows avoid trivializing service. Concerts affect an artist's career. They expand an artist's reputation among ordinary citizens. Media coverage of these shows reaches new audiences. For a rookie group, a military concert may attract press and radio play. Agencies plan these events as part of publicity and social responsibility. Artists and soldiers exchange small rituals. Fans give handwritten notes. Servicemen present patches or unit coins. Performers bow and offer signs of respect. These gestures carry meaning. They frame the event as more than a commercial show. They turn it into a civic ritual where culture and service meet. At times, military musicians join the show. A bass band may rehearse with the visiting group. That mix of tradition and pop produces unique arrangements. Musicians exchange skills and widen their craft. The collaborations leave performers with new ideas for future shows. Technology changed how concerts reach troops. Live streams let soldiers who stay on duty watch from barracks. Recorded clips travel to families back home. That spread increases the value of a single show. For some soldiers, the performance becomes a widely shared memory. Security plays a role. Bases must vet visitors and control access. Performers follow security briefings. The military protects both troops and artists. Those steps shape the tone of the concert. The setting can feel formal because of restrictions and uniforms. Performers must show sensitivity. They avoid jokes about danger or politics. They respect ranks and customs. A wrong remark can harm trust. Producers coach artists on what to say and where. That preparation helps maintain a positive mood. For some soldiers, a concert becomes a lasting memory. A single night can mark a friendship or start a romance. It can become the story a soldier tells at reunions. The show can shape a soldier's image of the country they serve. Fan clubs sometimes fund concerts or send care packages. They coordinate gift bundles and letters. Those packages make the visit personal. Fans see the concerts as a way to support their idols and their idols' supporters. The combined effort strengthens the link between civilian fandom and military life. Music events can influence public views of the military. Seeing beloved artists on base makes the service seem more humane. Parents who once worried may feel reassured by those images. Recruiters may use concerts as community outreach. The effect rests on the audience's trust in the artists. Other countries practice similar events. In the United States, entertainers have a long history of performing for troops. Through organizations like the USO, those shows aim to lift spirits during wars and peacetime. The format shifted with new music and media. K-pop concerts join that global pattern while keeping their own style. After the encore, the lights dim. The group waves and leaves. Soldiers return to their routines with a new story to tell. A poster hangs in a dorm, a song plays on a radio at a checkpoint. The memory of the night sits with them like a small gift. It keeps them company through long shifts and cold watches. A narrow stage sits at the end of a mess hall. Folding chairs line up in rows. Uniforms fill the room, musicians tune. A K-pop girl group steps into light. They greet the crowd with bright smiles. They launch into the first song. The music cuts through the hush of routine. The soldiers clap, some stand, some sing along. For many, this night is a rare break. It is a night that feels like home. That is the core purpose of military concerts. They lift morale. They inject a human moment into strict schedules. Training follows rigid routines. Day after day looks the same. A concert interrupts that loop. It pulls attention away from fatigue and boredom. It reminds soldiers of people beyond the base. Music connects to memory. A familiar chorus can bring back a street, a friend, or a family meal. That memory eases tension. Laughter and applause release stress. Shared rhythm creates a shared mood. When soldiers move with music, they feel part of a group. That feeling matters in units where team trust underpins safety and mission success. Concerts express gratitude. They tell troops that the public cares. Leaders sometimes invite artists to show official support. That public message matters to soldiers who serve away from home. It can change how they view their work. It can renew a sense of purpose. Military concerts have history outside K-pop. During past wars, entertainers traveled to camps and front lines. Those shows kept morale steady in hard times. The format moved into peacetime. It adapted to new music styles and media. Today, pop acts bring that practice into modern settings. South Korea places special weight on military concerts. The country has mandatory service for men. Thousands of young men enter the military each year. K-pop is a dominant cultural force. The music and the artists share roots with the audience. Artists grew up in the same schools and cities. Their songs travel with soldiers into training halls. That closeness makes concerts highly valued. Organizers plan these shows carefully. Bases may host small stage shows or larger open-air concerts. The military works with entertainment agencies and broadcasters. Schedules must fit training needs and security rules. For remote outposts, logistics may include special transport and extra security. Staff coordinates sound, lights, and seating. The goal is a smooth night where performers and troops can focus on the music. Artists join for several reasons. They wish to thank fans who serve. They want to show support for the nation. Agencies see these shows as a form of outreach. Artists gain stage experience in unusual settings. They learn to perform for an audience that reacts differently from fans at a club. A military crowd may clap on cue and watch in silence. That test refines timing and presence. Some groups use these concerts to keep ties with fans who serve. Fans who serve as soldiers become a key audience. A simple song can feel like it was meant for them. Artists who take time to visit bases build reputation for care. Fans write letters and send care packages. The exchange creates a loop of support that spans service time. Concerts present a polished image in other countries when foreign troops or journalists attend. They show national music and style. A single performance can turn curiosity into admiration. When the same artist tours other countries, that memory follows. Music becomes a form of influence that avoids politics. Some concerts use full production. Lights, dancers, and pyrotechnics make the show feel like a festival. Other shows stay small and intimate. A group may strip back a song to voice and guitar. That version can touch soldiers in a different way. Simple shows allow conversation between performers and audience. Groups answer questions and read letters. Those moments have strong emotional weight. Picture a company that finished a month of field drills. They meet in a cold hangar. The lights turn on. A girl group performs a pop hit. For the first time in weeks, the soldiers laugh. One soldier calls home. Another starts a chorus. After the show, the group signs posters and talks with the troops. The men go back to their bunks with a lighter mood. In a different scene, a border outpost gets a surprise visit. The base lies near rocky terrain. Soldiers work long hours and have limited leave. The group arrives by convoy. The audience numbers fewer, but the intensity grows. A quiet ballad brings a room to silence. A handshake at the barricade gives the soldier a personal memory. That memory holds through the months of night watches. Music changes brain chemistry. Sound moves the body and mind. A catchy chorus increases dopamine. People feel reward when they sing along. Group applause releases oxytocin, which strengthens bonds. Those chemicals reduce stress and sharpen focus. A concert can reset mood in a way food or rest may not. Beyond mood, concerts build cohesion. Soldiers who share an emotional event form tighter social ties. They recall the night as something they did together. Stories from the show become part of unit lore. That shared memory helps when they face hard training. Some critics say concerts distract from duty or serve as propaganda. Those concerns matter. Organizers must balance entertainment with mission readiness. Bands usually play at times that do not interfere with operations. Leaders use concerts to reward performance or mark milestones. When handled respectfully, the shows avoid trivializing service. Concerts affect an artist's career. They expand an artist's reputation among ordinary citizens. Media coverage of these shows reaches new audiences. For a rookie group, a military concert may attract press and radio play. Agencies plan these events as part of publicity and social responsibility. Artists and soldiers exchange small rituals. Fans give handwritten notes. Servicemen present patches or unit coins. Performers bow and offer signs of respect. These gestures carry meaning. They frame the event as more than a commercial show. They turn it into a civic ritual where culture and service meet. At times, military musicians join the show. A bass band may rehearse with the visiting group. That mix of tradition and pop produces unique arrangements. Musicians exchange skills and widen their craft. The collaborations leave performers with new ideas for future shows. Technology changed how concerts reach troops. Live streams let soldiers who stay on duty watch from barracks. Recorded clips travel to families back home. That spread increases the value of a single show. For some soldiers, the performance becomes a widely shared memory. Security plays a role. Bases must vet visitors and control access. Performers follow security briefings. The military protects both troops and artists. Those steps shape the tone of the concert. The setting can feel formal because of restrictions and uniforms. Performers must show sensitivity. They avoid jokes about danger or politics. They respect ranks and customs. A wrong remark can harm trust. Producers coach artists on what to say and where. That preparation helps maintain a positive mood. For some soldiers, a concert becomes a lasting memory. A single night can mark a friendship or start a romance. It can become the story a soldier tells at reunions. The show can shape a soldier's image of the country they serve. Fan clubs sometimes fund concerts or send care packages. They coordinate gift bundles and letters. Those packages make the visit personal. Fans see the concerts as a way to support their idols and their idols' supporters. The combined effort strengthens the link between civilian fandom and military life. Music events can influence public views of the military. Seeing beloved artists on base makes the service seem more humane. Parents who once worried may feel reassured by those images. Recruiters may use concerts as community outreach. The effect rests on the audience's trust in the artists. Other countries practice similar events. In the United States, entertainers have a long history of performing for troops through organizations like the USO. Those shows aimed to lift spirits during wars and peacetime. The format shifted with new music and media. K-pop concerts join that global pattern while keeping their own style. After the encore, the lights dim. The group waves and leaves. Soldiers return to their routines with a new story to tell. A poster hangs in a dorm. A song plays on a radio at a checkpoint. The memory of the night sits with them like a small gift. It keeps them company through long shifts and cold watches. In 2017, there was this concert that was supposed to be a big happy thing for US troops stationed in South Korea. The government was all excited about it. They wanted famous K-pop idols to perform. It was meant to look friendly and supportive, like everyone was smiling and clapping together. The problem was, most of the big K-pop groups didn't show up. It wasn't because they all got sick or forgot the date. They just didn't want to be there. And that turned the whole thing into something very awkward. The government had promoted the event as if it was an honor to perform. Posters had soldiers and pop stars smiling side by side. TV spots played cheerful music. The whole idea was to show unity between South Korea and the United States. But in the entertainment world, people were already whispering that this concert wasn't just about music. Many thought it was political. The US military presence in South Korea had been controversial for decades, and in 2017, tensions were high. There were protests in the streets about military bases, environmental concerns, and the missile defense system known as THAAD. The concert felt to many like a propaganda tool to make it all look fine. The list of invited artists was huge. Some of the biggest K-pop names were on it. Fans expected to see top idols, from chart-topping boy bands to famous girl groups. But as the date got closer, something strange happened. The lineup started shrinking. First, a couple of groups announced scheduling conflicts, then solo artists pulled out, and then whole agencies began saying their acts wouldn't perform. It wasn't like one or two, it was most of them. By the final week, the show looked like a shadow of what was promised. People in the industry said the boycott was quiet but deliberate. No one wanted to go on the record about it, but insiders claimed artists didn't want to be used for political purposes. Performing for soldiers wasn't the issue. Many idols had done that before in charity events or morale-boosting tours. This was different because it was directly backed by the government and tied to a controversial military situation. Showing up could be seen as publicly supporting those policies. And in K-pop, where fan opinion is everything, that was dangerous. Fans are global, they watch every move. A wrong political stance can lead to backlash, boycotts, and endless online battles. Even though no idol agency put out a statement saying, "We oppose this concert," the pattern was obvious. Big stars stayed away. Smaller, less established acts, ones who couldn't afford to say no, ended up filling the schedule. That made the event feel even more politically loaded. People watching saw not the nation's favorite stars, but performers who were clearly last-minute replacements. It looked like the top talent had abandoned the cause. On the day of the concert, the mood was strange. The stage was decorated with bright banners and American and South Korean flags. Military officers gave speeches about friendship. But the crowd was smaller than expected. Troops sat scattered in folding chairs. The performers smiled and waved, but the energy was thin. Reporters noticed the missing big names. The TV coverage avoided mentioning it, but the gossip online was loud. Fans on social media shared the original lineup posters side by side, with the actual performance list, pointing out all the empty spots. The boycott wasn't openly talked about in the press, but it became one of those open secrets. People said it showed the growing willingness of the K-pop industry to resist political pressure. In the past, idol groups often did whatever the government asked, especially if it was tied to national pride or military support. But by 2017, agencies had more power, and the global market gave them option. If a domestic political event could hurt their image overseas, it was safer to just avoid it. This wasn't a single person making a bold speech. It was a quiet refusal, spread across multiple companies, carried out without fanfare, that made it harder for authorities to fight back. You can't punish someone for having scheduling conflicts, especially when they don't publicly criticize you. And since the artists stayed silent, the government couldn't make an example out of anyone. It was a kind of passive resistance that still sent a strong message. The entertainment industry would not be an easy tool for political theater. Groups weren't there and assumed it was just bad luck. Others pieced together the political angle and felt proud that idols had avoided being used. International fans, especially those familiar with South Korea's tense history with the US military presence, saw it as an act of quiet bravery. The whole thing left a mark in industry circles. It showed that even in a heavily controlled and image-conscious world like K-pop, there were limits to what stars would do for the sake of appearances. The 2017 concert was supposed to be a flashy show of unity, but instead it exposed divisions. The military wanted a stage full of famous faces. The government wanted a photo opportunity, but what they got was a lineup that told a different story, one they didn't want to advertise. And looking back, it's almost funny how clumsy it was. The people organizing the event seemed to think that everyone would just go along with it. They acted like you could mix politics and pop music without anyone noticing. They thought if you put enough flags and stage lights, nobody would ask questions. But the fans weren't stupid, and the agencies weren't either. By the time the first act hit the stage, the damage had already been done. In June 2002, South Korea was shaken by an event that would leave deep scars on the country's relationship with the United States. Two middle school girls, 14-year-old Shin Hyo-sun and 14-year-old Shim Mi-seon, were walking to a friend's birthday party in the countryside outside Seoul. It was a summer afternoon, and the narrow road they used was a familiar one. On that same road, a US military convoy was moving through. Among the vehicles was a massive 50-ton armored bridge carrier. The soldiers driving it had limited visibility due to the size and design of the vehicle. As the convoy made its way along the rural path, the armored vehicle struck the two girls. They were killed instantly. The deaths were not just seen as a terrible accident, they became a national tragedy. Many South Koreans believed the incident reflected the unequal and sometimes tense nature of the US-South Korea alliance. The United States Forces Korea, or USFK, had been stationed in the country for decades as part of a defense agreement dating back to the Korean War. But incidents involving US troops and civilians had long been a point of friction, especially because of the status of Forces Agreement, or SOFA under SOFA. Under SOFA, US soldiers accused of crimes while on duty were subject to US military jurisdiction, not South Korean courts. In the case of the two girls, the US military took custody of the soldiers involved, tried them in a military court, and eventually acquitted both men of negligent homicide. The acquittals were announced in late 2002. For many South Koreans, this was the breaking point. Thousands took to the streets in protests that lasted for weeks. Demonstrators held candlelight vigils, carried photographs of the girls, and called for changes to SOFA. These were not small gatherings. Some rallies drew tens of thousands of people, filling city squares with flickering candlelight and chants demanding justice. At the time, anti-American sentiment surged to levels not seen in decades. US businesses, military facilities, and even cultural events became targets of boycotts and criticism. Some protesters burned American flags, while others demanded the complete withdrawal of US forces from South Korea. The image of the two schoolgirls became a rallying point, especially among the younger generation. University students, civic groups, and even families who had never joined protests before came together in a rare show of unity. The vigils were emotional, often beginning with moments of silence followed by speeches from activists, parents, and sometimes religious leaders. The girls' classmates wrote letters and poems that were read aloud at these events, further fueling the public's anger. The US government expressed regret for the deaths, and senior military officials issued apologies. But apologies did little to calm the outrage when the legal outcome left many feeling that justice had not been served. The South Korean government faced its own backlash for not pressing harder against the US on the matter. Politicians, especially those campaigning for the presidency at the time, had to navigate the intense public mood. The tragedy became a political flashpoint in the 2002 South Korean presidential election, with some candidates promising to renegotiate SOFA or reduce the country's dependence on US military support. Although the protests eventually subsided, the incident did not fade from public memory. It became part of the collective consciousness, a reminder of the perceived imbalance in the alliance. For many, the deaths of Shin Hye-sun and Shim Meseon were not just about two lives lost. They symbolized a deeper grievance about sovereignty, justice, and respect between allies. Fast forward to 2017, and the memory of that summer still lingered. That year, tensions between the US and South Korea once again ran high, this time over the deployment of the Terminal High-Altitude Area Defense System, known as V. While the government argued that that was necessary to defend against North Korean missiles, many citizens opposed it, citing environmental concerns, geopolitical risks, and fears that it would make South Korea a bigger target for attacks. Protests erupted in several towns, and US goods and companies once again became the focus of boycotts. It was in this climate that the 2002 tragedy resurfaced in public discourse. Activists and older protesters drew direct links between the events, pointing out that both situations involved US military presence and decision-making that affected South Korean lives without what they saw as adequate local consent. Social media posts and protest speeches often referenced the schoolgirls by name, reminding people of the earlier anger and injustice. To many, the VAT issue was not isolated, it was part of a longer story about the unequal power dynamics between the two nations. The 2002 tragedy also influenced the tone of these later protests. In 2017, some demonstrations used candlelight vigils as a symbolic gesture, mirroring the ones held 15 years earlier. Placards and banners occasionally displayed the faces of Shin Hye-sun and Shim Meseon alongside anti-THAAD slogans. For the older generation, this was a continuation of a fight that had never truly ended. For younger protesters who had been children or not yet born in 2002, the story of the schoolgirls served as a history lesson about why such resistance mattered to their parents and grandparents. The incident's role in shaping public attitudes toward the US military presence in South Korea cannot be overstated. It created a shared memory of loss and injustice that could be called upon in future political struggles. Whenever a new controversy arose involving US troops or policy, the tragedy was there in the background, sometimes quiet, sometimes spoken aloud, but always ready to remind people of the costs they felt had been paid in the name of alliance. Even years later, the site of the accident remained a place of remembrance. Locals maintained a small memorial where flowers, photos, and handwritten notes could be found. On anniversaries, people still visited to pay their respects. The story continued to be taught in schools, covered in documentaries, and discussed in civic groups. It became more than a news headline from the past. It was a piece of living history. In October 2014, a tragedy struck during an outdoor concert in Seongnam, South Korea. The event was meant to be a lively and joyful gathering. People had come to see popular K-pop groups perform. The air was filled with excitement, and the crowd pressed in to get the best view. But beneath all the energy, a hidden danger waited, one that no one in the audience thought about until it was too late. The concert took place near the Pangeo Techno Valley, a business district known for its modern office buildings and technology companies. The area had an open-air plaza where events were sometimes held. On this day, hundreds of people gathered. Some arrived early to claim spots near the stage. Others came later and had to find whatever space was available. In crowded events like this, people sometimes look for higher ground to see better. That's where the problem began. Near the plaza was a large ventilation grate, part of the building's underground parking structure. The grate was wide enough to stand on, and it sat a little above ground level. It wasn't meant to hold many people, but it looked solid from the outside. As the concert started, dozens of spectators climbed onto it to get a better view. They likely thought it was just another part of the plaza's flooring, not realizing it was a cover over an open shaft. The grate was made of metal panels, Beneath it was a drop of about 20 meters, roughly the height of a 7-story building. The panels were designed to handle occasional maintenance workers, not the weight of dozens of jumping, moving people. As the crowd cheered and swayed to the music, the metal began to give way. At some point during the performance, the grate buckled. Witnesses later said it happened suddenly, with no warning sound. One moment, people were standing and enjoying the show. The next, the panels collapsed inward. Around 27 people fell through the opening, plunging straight down into the parking structure below. The scene was chaotic. Screams rose over the music. Those near the edge of the grate scrambled backward, pulling others with them. Some witnesses froze in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. Others rushed to look down into the hole, only to be met with the horrifying sight of bodies lying on the concrete floor far below. Emergency services arrived quickly. Firefighters, paramedics, and police moved in, setting up barriers and lowering rescue equipment into the shaft. But for many, it was already too late. 16 people died from the fall. 13 others were badly injured, suffering broken bones, head trauma, and other life-threatening wounds. Survivors were rushed to nearby hospitals, while rescuers continued to search for anyone who might still be alive beneath the wreckage. Later investigations revealed that the ventilation cover had been dangerously overloaded. The weight limit was far lower than the number of people standing on it that day. Event organizers had not blocked it off or warned attendees about it. Some officials suggested that the concert layout, which didn't provide enough elevated viewing spots, encouraged people to climb onto unsafe structures. Responsibility quickly became a point of debate. The concert was organized by Gyeonggi Province's local newspaper, and it was part of a festival celebrating the region. In the aftermath, questions arose about whether the organizers had taken proper safety measures. Police launched an investigation, interviewing staff, event planners, and city officials. The head of the organizing team was deeply shaken by the tragedy. In the days following the accident, he issued a public apology and expressed guilt over what had happened. Just a day after making his statement, he was found dead in an apparent suicide. His death added another layer of grief and shock to an already devastating event. In South Korea, the tragedy became a major news story. It came only months after the Seoul ferry disaster in April 2014, where more than 300 people died, many of them schoolchildren. That earlier disaster had already made the public sensitive to issues of safety, regulations, and negligence. The concert collapse stirred the same fears, raising concerns that lessons from past tragedies were not being learned fast enough. Families of the victims gathered to mourn, many expressing anger alongside their grief. They wanted answers and accountability. Some spoke about how their loved ones had simply gone to enjoy a concert and never returned. They questioned how something as simple as a ventilation grate could become a death trap in a public space. In the days after, city inspectors examined similar structures in other areas, checking for weak or unsafe covers. Event organizers across the country were urged to review safety plans more carefully, especially in outdoor spaces that might have hidden hazards. Witness accounts from that day still remain vivid. One survivor recalled standing on the edge of the grate and feeling it shift slightly before hearing screams. Another described reaching out instinctively and grabbing someone's arm as they fell, only to lose their grip. The fall was so sudden that many didn't even have time to react. The site of the accident became a temporary memorial. People brought flowers, photographs, and handwritten notes. Messages expressed sorrow, love, and a shared sense of loss. Some came from strangers who hadn't known the victims but felt the weight of the tragedy deeply. While life in Panjio eventually returned to normal, the memory of that day has stayed with those who witnessed it. The survivors live with both physical scars and the mental toll of the experience. For the families who lost loved ones, the plaza is not just a public square, it's the place where their lives changed forever. If you want to hear more stories like this, remember to subscribe to Dumb Historian. We thought we had it all figured out. You bring in the big stage, the big lights, the big crowd. You tell everyone where to stand, where to sit, where to clap. And then you pray the weather stays nice. That's how it always worked in the old days, or so we told ourselves. But then you get one day, one hot day, or one rainy day, and everything starts to fall apart. In 2012, people kept talking about bad concerts, but truth be told, none of them really matched the disaster we're thinking of here. They had their problems. Maybe the sound went bad, maybe the crowd got restless, but it wasn't the kind where weather and planning teamed up to knock the whole thing over. That's why folks look more at what happened years later, like in 2023 with the World Scout Jamboree. You had heat so bad people were passing out. And still the schedule kept going until it couldn't. That's the kind of thing that leaves a mark. Now, the dumb part is, we all know Korea in summer isn't exactly a gentle hug from the sky. You get heat that makes your shoes stick to the ground. You get storms that turn grass into soup. Everyone knows this, but planners back then acted like if they printed enough schedules and handed out enough maps, the sun would just be polite and stay behind a cloud. The same thinking went into so many events. The belief that the weather would do whatever they imagined, not what it wanted. At the Jamboree, kids from all over the world showed up, tents lined up in neat rows, flags waving, big smiles on day one, and then, the air turned into an oven. You could see the shimmer above the ground. People tried to keep drinking water, but the taps were far apart, and there weren't enough shade tents. The kind of problem where if you fixed it on paper, it looked fine. But when you were out there, it was like someone forgot the human body could overheat. And then when the rain came, it didn't help. The ground turned to mud, and the mud stuck to your ankles until you felt like you were dragging bricks. It's the same type of mistake people kept making for years. You plan an event for the best case, not the worst case. That's because worst case thinking makes people uncomfortable. If you stand up in a meeting and say, "What if the whole place floods?" They call you negative. If you ask, "What if the heat is so bad people faint?" They tell you not to worry, that it's a freak event. Except it isn't a freak event when it happens every summer in one form or another. In the 2012 events there was plenty of noise about safety, but the disasters that came up were different. A speaker blows, the crowd pushes forward, a few people get hurt. Still bad, but not the kind of public scandal that stays in the headlines for weeks. The Jamboree, that was different. That was a long drawn-out story of watching a plan unravel while the cameras rolled. Politicians came in to inspect things. Volunteers tried to hand out extra supplies, and people online tore into every photo and every report. When you learn that poor planning under extreme weather, isn't just a private headache. It's something that can turn into a national embarrassment in a matter of days. One of the most obvious lessons, though we seem slow to learn it, was that weather isn't a side note. In the past, it got treated like a guest you hoped would behave. If you had a concert or a festival, you put the weather in the check the forecast box, right next to ordering food or booking the sound system. Nobody wrote a plan for, what if the stage is melting and the crowd is boiling, because they thought that was too unlikely to bother with. But weather in Korea, especially in summer, isn't shy. It doesn't care if your event is supposed to make history. It doesn't care if you've got foreign guests or cameras or the president himself visiting. The sun will still fry your plans, and the rain will still swallow your walkways. At the Jamboree, it was almost like the weather was playing a game. First the heat, then the rain, then the wind, and the planners were stuck reacting instead of controlling. Looking back, the stupid part wasn't that people didn't know the weather could be extreme. Everyone knew. It's that they treated it like a problem to solve on the day, instead of something you build your whole plan around from the start. If you expect the ground to turn to mud, you put walkways down. If you expect the heat to be brutal, you make shade and water more important than the opening ceremony. But that wasn't the thinking back then. The thinking was, we'll deal with it if it happens, and by the time it did, it was too late. The public part of the scandal came not just from the failure, but from the way it looked. Photos of kids fanning themselves under tiny strips of shade. Videos of tents collapsing in the wind. Reports of people being moved out in buses. Once that's out there, it stops being about the actual event and turns into a story about how the country looks to the rest of the world. That's when leaders start blaming each other, committees start writing long reports, and everyone pretends they would have done it differently. It's easy to laugh at now. But the truth is, if you put the same planners in the same spot again without what they learned, they'd probably make the same calls. They'd check the forecast, see a few hot days, shrug, and go back to deciding where the flagpole should go. That's why disasters like the Jamboree keep sticking in memory. Not because they're rare, but because they're the moment the curtain falls and everyone sees how thin the plan really was. They said the 2023 World Scout Jamboree would be the biggest, brightest, and best one ever. They said scouts from all over the globe would gather in South Korea to share skills, culture, and friendship. They promised modern facilities, smooth planning, and a safe, unforgettable experience. And we all believed them, because why wouldn't we? We thought they knew what they were doing. But what happened instead was a long, hot, messy disaster that people will talk about for years, not because it was wonderful, but because it was the kind of event that makes you wonder if the people in charge had ever organized anything in their lives before. The first warning signs were there before the opening ceremony even began. The site in Seongnam, a reclaimed tidal flat, was massive but bare. The sun beat down on it with nothing much to block the heat. The ground wasn't shaded, the paths weren't covered, and the wind coming from the coast was more like a slow breath than a breeze. It was August in South Korea, which everyone knows is hot and humid. Everyone except, apparently, the organizers, who seemed surprised that the weather turned out exactly as anyone with a calendar could have predicted. The campgrounds themselves had the space, but they didn't have the infrastructure you'd expect for an event hosting tens of thousands of teenagers and their leaders. Toilets were few and far between. Some didn't work properly, while others overflowed, sending unpleasant smells drifting across the site. Showers existed in theory, but in practice meant long lines, sometimes over an hour, for water that wasn't always available. Drinking water stations were scattered too far apart, and on hot days, some ran out before the next refill. By the time the opening ceremony started, scouts were already feeling the strain. The heat index, how hot it feels with humidity, was pushing dangerous levels. Kids in uniform shirts, neckerchiefs, and hats were sweating through their clothes before breakfast. The organizers had said there would be plenty of shade structures, but most of what counted as shade was a few flimsy tents or tarps set up by the troops themselves. It didn't take long before the medical tents started filling up with scouts showing signs of heat exhaustion, dizziness, nausea, headaches. Some were even collapsing from heat stroke. The official advice was to stay hydrated and rest in the shade, which was a bit like telling someone stuck in the middle of a desert to just find a tree. The problem wasn't that scouts didn't want to follow the advice, it was that the facilities and the environment made it almost impossible to do so. If you had to walk 15 minutes in full sun just to find water, you were already in trouble. On top of the heat issues, the planning seemed slapdash in other ways. Activities that were supposed to be the heart of the jamboree were often underprepared or poorly staffed. Some stations ran out of supplies within hours. Others had leaders who didn't know the schedule or weren't given the equipment they needed. A few troops decided to run their own activities in camp rather than waste the day wandering from one underwhelming stop to another. Meals became another sore point. Food lines stretched for what felt like miles, and by the time some scouts reached the front, certain dishes were gone. Special dietary needs were not always respected. Vegetarians sometimes got served meat, and allergic scouts had to skip meals rather than risk eating something unsafe. For an event that had been years in the making, the food service looked like it had been thrown together the week before. As the days went on, the number of heat-related illnesses climbed. Medical staff worked hard, but they were clearly overwhelmed. In some cases, ambulances had to take scouts to nearby hospitals. Delegations began making the call to withdraw their contingents entirely, deciding the risk wasn't worth it. The United Kingdom, with over 4,000 scouts on site, pulled out and relocated to hotels in Seoul. The United States followed soon after, as did Canada and Singapore. Seeing huge groups pack up and leave sent a clear signal that things were not under control. The organizers tried to downplay the situation at first, saying the withdrawals were precautionary. But videos and reports from scouts told another story, one of tents baking in the sun, of water shortages, of toilets that you didn't dare use unless you had no choice. Some scouts were disappointed to miss the rest of the event, but many admitted they were relieved to leave. Adding to the sense of chaos, a typhoon was forecast to hit the Korean peninsula before the event ended. The thought of thousands of scouts sitting in flimsy tents, while strong winds and heavy rain rolled in, was too much for even the most optimistic leaders. The decision was made to shut the site down early. What was supposed to be a grand finale ended with an evacuation and an unceremonious scattering of contingents to shelters, hotels, and other safe locations inland. In the end, the 2023 Jamboree became an example of how bad planning can sink even the most ambitious events. It showed what happens when you pick a site for its size without thinking about its climate. It showed what happens when you assume facilities will somehow work themselves out once people arrive, and it showed that all the speeches, banners and ceremonies in the world can't hide basic logistical failures. The people in charge probably thought they were ready. They probably had meetings, PowerPoint slides, and colorful brochures, but somewhere along the way, they forgot the basics. People need shade, water, working toilets, and food they can eat without getting sick. Instead, They put tens of thousands of scouts into an open, sun-baked field in the middle of summer with not enough of any of those things. It's just the sort of mistake you'd expect from a small-town fair that runs out of lemonade, not from a world event with years of preparation and a multi-million-dollar budget. The Jamboree was supposed to be the biggest youth event of the decade. People from dozens of countries came together, wearing uniforms, carrying flags, and smiling for cameras. The idea was simple. Everyone would camp together, share cultures, and build friendships. But then, things went wrong. The campsite was too hot, too wet, too full of bugs. The food was bad, the toilets smelled bad, and the schedule was falling apart. People started going home early. Some even called it a disaster. The government looked at the situation and panicked. They wanted something that would make people forget about the bad parts. Something big, something loud, something exciting. They thought about speeches, but speeches are boring. They thought about sports, but sports take too long. Then someone said the magic words, K-pop concert. This made perfect sense to them. Everyone likes K-pop, right? People see it on TV and think of smiling singers with perfect hair. The songs are catchy, the dances are sharp, and the lights flash so fast you don't have time to think about anything else. If the Jamboree was falling apart, why not drown the bad news in music and glitter? It was like putting sugar on burnt toast. You still taste the burn, but at least there's sugar. They decided to make it happen right away. There was no time for planning. They didn't even care which groups were available. They just called everyone they could. Big names, small names, it didn't matter. They wanted famous faces on stage as soon as possible. They called in favors from entertainment companies. They pushed schedules around. They didn't ask how much it would cost, because when something is embarrassing, you don't ask about the price to fix it, you just pay. It was like trying to fix a leaky roof by throwing a giant party in the living room. The rain is still coming in, but people are too busy dancing to notice, at least for a little while. The concert idea grew fast. They didn't just want one or two performers. They wanted a lineup so big it would fill a stadium. They wanted fans screaming, waving light sticks, and posting pictures online so the world would see something fun instead of tents sinking in mud. They called it a celebration, instead of damage control. They thought if they used happy words, people would forget the sad ones. They moved the concert to Seoul, far from the messy campsite. It would be indoors, with air conditioning, clean bathrooms, and food that didn't come in little paper trays. They arranged buses to take the Jamboree participants from the site to the city. Some buses broke down, some left late, but the main thing was to get everyone in front of the stage. On the night of the concert, the stadium filled with people holding their phones up, recording everything. The lights went dark, the music started, and the first group came out in perfect costumes. The crowd screamed so loud you could feel it in your chest. For a moment it really did feel like everything was fine. The singers smiled, waved, and hit every dance move. The screens behind them flashed colors and shapes so bright you could forget about mosquitoes and bad food. Government officials sat in special seats, clapping and nodding. They looked around and thought, yes, this is working. The cameras from the news station zoomed in on the happy faces in the audience. They avoided showing the empty sections or the tired people in the back. Every shot was picked to make it look like the Jamboree was a huge success. During the breaks between acts, hosts on stage talked about unity, friendship, and how amazing the event was. They didn't mention the heatwave or the early departures. They didn't talk about the people who had gotten sick. Instead, they told everyone to cheer for the next group, because the next group was even more famous than the last. Fans from outside the Jamboree joined in too. Some didn't even know what the Jamboree was. They just came for the music. In the end, that was part of the plan. If more people talked about the K-pop show than the messy campsite, then the problem was solved. Or at least, hidden under layers of neon lights and perfect choreography. By the end of the night, everyone's ears were ringing. People left with bags of merchandise and hundreds of blurry videos on their phones. The government officials congratulated themselves. They believed they had turned a failure into a celebration. They didn't think about how fast people forget concerts. They didn't think about how many news stories about the campsite were still online. In their minds, they had done something clever. It was the kind of thinking people had back then. If you had a problem, you didn't always fix the cause. You covered it up with something shiny, like when a store sells food that's almost expired, so they put it on sale with bright red stickers. People get excited about the sale and forget to ask why the food is so cheap. Or when a town has a bad smell, and instead of finding the source, they spray perfume in the air and call it fresh. The K-pop concert was perfume for the Jamboree. It made things smell better for a night. People from the past thought that was good enough. They believed noise, lights, and cheering could erase any bad memory. Maybe they didn't know that memories are harder to erase than that, or maybe they didn't care. Either way, the story became part of the Jamboree's history, not the history of teamwork and global friendship that was promised, but the history of how a field full of mud and mosquitoes was replaced, for one night, by a stage full of idols singing about love and dreams. In the year not too long ago, the great singers of the land, called BTS, stood upon a stage. The stage was not planned with big charts or long lists. No, it came quick, like a chicken running across the yard without shoes. They sang, and people screamed like goats in the market. The sound carried across the air, bouncing off buildings like stones thrown at tin roofs. It was a happy noise, but soon, trouble came. Some of the men in the big chairs of politics, the ones who wear tight suits and talk too long, they began to think strange thoughts. They said, "Ah yes, these 7 young lads. They wear shiny clothes. They dance, they sing, they make the people clap. Why not make them work for the country? Why not tell them to sing without coins in return?" It was an idea like telling a farmer to plow the land with no ox, just his teeth. The thought spread fast. The politicians stood in their rooms of talk, nodding to each other, thinking they were clever. One of them even said, "It will be for the pride of the nation. We must make them sing without pay. Their voices will feed the people's souls." They spoke as if songs could be eaten for breakfast. They forgot that even singers must eat real food, wear clothes that don't fall apart, and sleep in houses that don't leak when the rain comes. The people heard this and began to shout. Some said, "This is a bad idea, like putting a goat in a library." Others said, "They already do much for the country. Why take more from them without giving anything back?" But the politicians, they puffed out their chests like roosters at sunrise. They claimed it would bring honor, as if honor could pay the electricity bill. In the old days, before this trouble, BTS had already made the nation's name big in the world. They sang in many lands, their music carried by wires and magic screens. They brought money to the land through concerts, albums, and tiny dolls that looked like them. People traveled from far away just to see the country they came from. This was already a gift bigger than a mountain of gold. But still, the men in suits wanted more. They used words like mobilize and service. They said it as if they were sending soldiers to guard the border, but here it was only to make them sing and dance for free. The word mobilize made it sound serious, like a war. But there was no war, only microphones, lights, and loudspeakers. It was like calling a baker to the battlefield just to make bread without paying him. When the concert happened, it was loud and bright. The crowd was big, and the air was thick with excitement. But behind the smiles, there was a shadow. People whispered about the politicians' plan. Some feared that if BTS agreed, then other artists would be next. Painters would be told to paint for free for the nation. Poets would be ordered to write verses without coin. Dancers would be made to leap and twirl without rest. The foolishness grew. Some newspapers joined in, printing words like duty and patriotism in big letters, as if these words alone could make unpaid work fair. They forgot that patriotism does not mean turning people into free labor. The people who understood this shouted louder. They wrote letters, posted messages, and argued in tea houses and on the electric screens of phones. Meanwhile, the BTS members kept quiet in public. They smiled for the crowd and sang their songs, but their silence made people wonder what they truly thought. Were they willing to be used this way? Or did they see the trap that was being set? Nobody knew for sure, but the politicians kept talking, their mouths moving faster than their thinking. Some even tried to compare BTS to soldiers, saying, "Soldiers serve without asking for more, so should these singers." This was like saying a fisherman should plant rice because both use their hands. The work is different. The skill is different. The pay must be different too. But such logic did not slow the foolish tongues. The debate went on for weeks. People argued in markets, in offices, in schools. Even the old grandmothers at the corner shops spoke of it between selling vegetables. Why make them work for free? They asked. If they want to give, they can give, but don't order it like a king's command. The younger ones, who loved BTS dearly, were even angrier. They saw it as disrespect, as if the politicians could not see the years of effort, sweat, and sacrifice behind the music. Some of the politicians tried to back away when the fire of public anger grew too hot. They said, "We only meant it as a suggestion, not a command." But their earlier words were still in the ears of the people, and once words fly out, they cannot be caught and stuffed back in. And so, the impromptu concert that began as a joyful gift became a storm of voices, not of music but of arguments. The foolishness of the plan was shown to all. The people saw how quickly leaders could turn gratitude into greed, and how easy it was to hide selfish plans under the flag of patriotism. The story became a lesson, though not the kind taught in books, more like the kind told at night, with a shake of the head and a warning about men who think music is free just because it comes from the heart. The Jamboree was supposed to be a proud event. People from all over the country had been told it would show the world how well we could organize and how much we cared about young people. The government promised everything would be ready on time. They said it would be safe, clean, and well planned. They said it would be the best one yet. But it did not happen like that. What was meant to be a celebration turned into a disaster, and the way it was handled made the country look foolish. From the start there were problems. The campsite was chosen without much thought. Officials walked around once, pointed at a field, and said it would do fine. They did not check the ground, the water supply, or the weather conditions. Nobody measured how far away medical help would be. When people asked questions, the answers were vague. "It'll be all right," they said, waving their hands. But it wasn't all right. The place was uneven, muddy in some parts, and dry and dusty in others. It had no proper drainage. Toilets were far away from tents, and in some areas there were no toilets at all. The first day was already a mess. Buses full of participants arrived hours late because nobody had planned for traffic. The organizers had forgotten that hundreds of vehicles would be coming in at the same time. Once people got to the site, they had to carry their luggage across long stretches of bumpy ground, because the drop-off point was nowhere near the tents. Many tents had been put up in a hurry, with poles missing or canvas torn. Some had no ropes to hold them down. A strong wind in the afternoon knocked several over, leaving kids and their belongings scattered in the open. Food became another problem. The kitchens were not big enough for the number of people there. Lines stretched so far that some missed meals entirely. Water taps were placed too close to the toilets, and the pipes were poorly fitted. At one point, the water turned brown. People were told to boil it before drinking, but there weren't enough stoves to do this. When reporters asked about it, an official shrugged and said the color was probably just minerals. That did not reassure anyone. Medical services were a joke. A small tent with 2 nurses was expected to serve thousands. When the heat became too much, kids fainted in the open, and the nurses could not keep up. Some had to be driven miles away to find proper care. The ambulance route was not clear, and drivers got stuck in the crowd. In one case, it took almost an hour for an ambulance to reach a patient. That delay became a big story in the papers, with headlines saying the site was a health hazard. The government tried to control the narrative. They told state TV to focus on smiling kids and cheerful songs. They sent ministers to walk around with cameras, pointing at flowers and decorations as if everything was fine. But the problems could not be hidden. Parents began posting their own photos online. Broken toilets, kids sleeping under ripped tents, meals that were little more than bread and watery soup. The images spread fast. Talk shows mocked the event. Newspaper cartoons showed ministers holding a map upside down, while tents fell in the background. Instead of fixing the issues, the officials blamed others. One minister said the weather was at fault. Another said foreign media were exaggerating. A third insisted the children were resilient and could handle discomfort. These comments made people even angrier. Parents didn't send their kids to prove they could survive poor planning. They sent them for a safe, well-run event. As the days went on, the heat got worse. There were no proper shaded areas, so people tried to make their own by tying sheets to sticks. The organizers banned some of these makeshift shelters, claiming they blocked the view. That only made tempers rise. A group of scout leaders confronted the organizers in a meeting, demanding better conditions. The organizers promised changes, but little happened. The final embarrassment came when several foreign delegations decided to leave early. They packed up and left the site altogether, saying it was unsafe. These were not small groups, they were large, well-known contingents whose absence was noticed. TV stations from other countries covered the story, and soon it was international news. The headlines abroad were blunt. National event turns to chaos. Organizers overwhelmed. Basic safety ignored. Back home, people wanted answers. Why had so much money been spent with so little to show for it? Why had officials ignored warnings from local authorities about the site? Why had no one made backup plans for heat, water, or medical care? Instead of answering, the government held a press conference full of excuses. They spoke in long sentences that sounded official but meant nothing. One minister even praised the event as a learning experience, which many took as proof that they did not understand the scale of their failure. The scandal grew because the handling of the situation was worse than the problems themselves. People can forgive mistakes if leaders act quickly and take responsibility. But here the leaders acted slowly, denied the obvious, and seemed more concerned with their image than the welfare of the participants. Every attempt to hide the truth only made it more obvious. Every time they blamed someone else, it became clearer they had no plan from the start. By the end, the Jamboree was not remembered for any of its activities, songs, or ceremonies. It was remembered for the broken tents, the brown water, the fainting children, and the sight of foreign groups walking out. It became a symbol of how bad planning, poor judgment, and stubborn pride can turn a national showcase into a national shame. The more the government tried to call it a success, the more people laughed or shook their heads. It was a lesson, though not the one the organizers had intended. Back in 2014, there was that big concert everyone talked about. We were all excited, because the band was huge and tickets were sold out weeks ahead. Nobody really thought much about safety back then. I mean, sure, people knew you shouldn't set off fireworks indoors or build a stage out of cardboard, but crowd size, that wasn't on our minds. The place was packed shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't even scratch your nose without bumping into 3 people. And to us, that was normal. If anything, folks thought, wow, look how popular this is. Nobody asked, hey, can we all get out if something goes wrong? The venue was an old building, not really made for big events. The doors were narrow and there weren't many of them. Some walls even had peeling paint, but people thought that gave it character. There weren't clear signs pointing to exits, just a few tiny glowing things that you'd miss if you blinked. And no one was checking how many people came in. If someone had a ticket, they went in. If someone didn't have a ticket but knew the guy at the door, they also went in. It was like stuffing more and more things into a bag without ever thinking the bag might rip. When the show started, the crowd pushed forward. People in the back wanted to be closer to the stage, and people in the front didn't want to move because they'd been waiting there for hours. It got tight, and then tighter. Breathing wasn't easy. Some folks joked about it, like, guess we're getting free hugs tonight. Nobody thought it was dangerous. We just figured, that's what concerts are like. Then things went wrong. There was noise, not music, and people began pushing in all directions. No one knew what caused it. Some said they thought they saw someone fall. Others said they heard something crash. Whatever it was, the crowd reacted fast, but not in a good way. People tried to get out, but there was no space. The doors were too far, and the paths to them were blocked by other people. It was like water trying to escape a bottle that only has a pinhole in the cap. People panicked. Some fell, more people tripped over them, and once you're on the ground in a crowd like that, you're in trouble. Afterward, the whole country was talking about it. Suddenly, everyone was saying, how did we not see this coming? It's not like overcrowding was a new idea. People knew about old tragedies from decades ago. There were stories about fires in theaters where people couldn't get out, or stadium stampedes from years back. But most of us thought, that's old news, we're more modern now. Except, we weren't. We had modern phones, modern music equipment, and modern ticketing systems. But the safety part, that was stuck in the past. Some folks blamed the venue owners. They said, why didn't you limit ticket sales? Why didn't you add more exits? Why wasn't there better lighting? Others blamed the event organizers for not planning the crowd flow, not having enough security, and not giving instructions if something went wrong. And then there were those who said, well, it's the people's fault for pushing, as if panic is something you can control once it starts. The truth is, everyone shared some blame, but back then, nobody wanted to admit it. We liked to think of safety as common sense, but our version of common sense was kind of lazy. For example, we thought if a door was unlocked, that was good enough. We thought having a couple of guards near the stage would keep order. We thought if someone yelled calm down, people would listen. That's the kind of thinking we had. The sort that makes you realize we weren't as smart about crowds as we thought we were. After the tragedy, the government and media got involved. There were interviews with experts, real experts this time, not just the guy who ran a food stall outside concerts for 20 years. They explained things we never thought about, like egress capacity and crowd density thresholds. Big words for how many people can get out safely and how close is too close. They showed diagrams of how people move in crowds, and how once the density reaches a certain point, movement becomes impossible. To us, it was eye-opening. Before that, we just thought a packed crowd was fine as long as the music was good. People started noticing venue infrastructure. That's a fancy way of saying the building and its safety features. Before 2014, most folks wouldn't have cared if a place had 10 exits or just one, or if the emergency lights worked. Now, suddenly, there were inspections. Some places even got shut down because they failed to meet the new standards. That made some people mad. Why are you closing our favorite concert hall? But others started to understand. If a place can't handle the number of people it invites, it's a disaster waiting to happen. It also changed how events were run. Organizers began putting actual limits on ticket sales, not just selling until there was no more room to stand. They hired more trained security staff, not just big guys who looked intimidating. There were even rules about where food stalls, merchandise tables, and barriers could go so they wouldn't block escape routes. Looking back, it's strange to think we needed a tragedy to learn these things, but we did. Even the public changed a bit. People started paying attention to their surroundings at events. Some even looked for exits before the show started, which, to be honest, sounded paranoid at first, but then you realize it's just smart. People began reporting blocked exits or overcrowded sections before things got bad. And if something did happen, they moved with purpose instead of standing there confused. Well, most of them anyway. Old habits die hard. Back then though, right after 2014, we were still figuring it out. We still had that old thinking in our heads that a good concert was worth a little discomfort, that a crowd was supposed to be chaotic, that safety was just don't trip. We didn't realize that without proper planning, without space to move, without clear paths to safety, a good night out could turn into something nobody wanted to remember. Long time ago, or maybe not that long ago, people in South Korea, they got this rule, very big rule. They say, every man, if he's strong enough and healthy enough, must go to army. No matter if he want or no want. No matter if he is singer, dancer, farmer, or the man who sells fish in market. Even if he is very famous, like those pretty boys who sing songs and dance on the stage, they still must go. They call it compulsory military service, which mean it is not like you can choose. It is like you must do it, or else you're in trouble. This law, it not care if you busy with work, or you in middle of big concert, or making album. When your time come, you pack bag, cut hair short, and you go wear uniform. The government say this is important because they must protect country. They got neighbors who sometimes not very friendly, like the North Korea, and they always have soldiers ready if something happen. So they need young men to train, to be ready for fighting if that day come. They say every man should do his share, so it fair. They know like idea that some people skip because they rich or famous. If one man skip, then maybe next man skip, and soon, no soldiers left. That is what they think. For most men, they go to army for about 18 months to 2 years. During this time they learn how to march, how to shoot, how to follow orders, how to sleep even when it cold and hard, and how to eat food fast before it get cold. It is not easy life. They wake up early, they run a lot, they stand still for a long time while officers shout. Some men like it because it make them strong. Some men not like it because it take away their freedom. But rule is rule. Now when it come to K-pop idols, this is where people talk a lot. Because idols, they make music, they dance, they smile for cameras, they go on TV shows, and they travel to other countries. They have fans all over the world who spend money for albums, concerts, light sticks, and even snacks with their face on it. If idol disappear for 2 years, the fans maybe forget, or maybe they start to like another group. Music world move fast. 2 years is long time in K-pop, so when an idol go to army, people worry, will his group still be popular? Will his career still be alive when he come back? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Many fans feel sad because they cannot see their favorite idol perform. Some even cry at the farewell concert. Sometimes the idol write letter or post video to say, please wait for me, I will come back stronger. They smile, but you can see in eyes they also worry. 2 years away is not just 2 years, it's 2 years when new singers come, new songs come, and world changes. When they come back they must work hard to catch up. Some do, some cannot. Also, sometimes the public watch very close to see if idol follow the rule or try to get out. If idol try to avoid service by lying about health or getting special job, the people get angry. They say, if normal man must go, then you must go too. You're not special just because you sing. And when people get angry in South Korea, they can be very strong about it. They write angry comments, they stop buying albums, they say bad things on TV. So many idols now, they just follow the rule, go to army, and try to keep image clean. There are some who get special service instead of combat. like they join military band or do public service job, sometimes because of injury or health, but still, they must serve. Even that can make people talk. If the job looked too easy, people say, "Ah, he got privilege." So idols have to be careful, because everything they do gets watched. Some groups they plan ahead. If one member go to army, the group maybe do solo work with other members, or they release old songs again, or they make TV appearances without him. Sometimes, if many members around same age, they all go to army at same time, so they can come back together. This way, the group disappears for 2 years, but then returns whole. But this is risky, because 2 years is enough for new group to take over the spotlight. The military service itself is not just about fighting, it is also about discipline, teamwork, and learning to live simple. In the army, idol is same as farmer's son or student or shopkeeper's boy. No makeup, no fancy clothes, no hairstylist. Just shaved head and same uniform as everyone. Some idols say it feels strange at first, but then they get used to it. They say they learn patience, and they feel proud to serve. Others say it is just something you must do, and then you go back to real life. Sometimes, when idol finish service and come back, people welcome them warmly. Fans bring banners to airport, give flowers, and shout their name. TV shows invite them to talk about army life. They tell stories about hard training, funny mistakes, and nights standing guard in cold wind. Some idols come back stronger, with deeper voice and more muscles. Fans like this change, but sometimes, if music world already moved on, they must start from bottom again. That is hard, especially for those who were at top before leaving. So, in South Korea, this compulsory military service, it is like a mountain every man must climb. Some climb it easy, some climb it hard. For K-pop idols, the mountain is taller because they must also carry the weight of fame, career, and public opinion. But in the end, most of them climb it, because that is the rule, and rules are not easy to break without paying price. Back in our day, when someone wanted to be a singer, they just sang. You went to the park or the marketplace, and you sang until somebody heard you. Maybe they liked it, maybe they didn't. Sometimes they threw coins, sometimes they threw vegetables. That's how you knew if you were good or not. But now, they have these, how do they call them? Systems. Big companies take a bunch of young folks and put them in a building, and they train them like they're building a fancy new clock. Every gear the same size, every part polished, every tick happening at the right time. That's why people call it the robotic system. Not because there are real robots, though we wouldn't be surprised if there were, but because it makes the people act like robots. These companies find kids who can dance a little, sing a little, or just look nice on camera. Then they tell them, you will train, and they mean it. You wake up early, maybe before the sun, and you start stretching and running and singing. Then you practice dancing until your feet want to leave your body. They make you learn how to smile in 10 different ways. You practice looking surprised in the mirror. You even learn how to wave your hand so it looks friendly but also expensive. We didn't know a hand could look expensive, but they do it somehow. And this training doesn't last a few weeks. Oh no, it lasts years. 3 years, 5 years, sometimes 10 years before you even stand on a stage in front of real people. Imagine being a teenager and spending all of it inside one building, eating the same kind of food, hearing the same kind of music, moving your arms and legs in the same exact way every single day. The idea is that by the time they let you perform, you move like a well-oiled machine, not a squeak out of place. But here's the thing, they are not machines. They're people, and people have a way of breaking down when you work them too hard. We hear the stories. Idols collapsing on stage because their bodies say, that's enough. Idols crying on live television because they're so tired their feelings spill out without permission. The system doesn't always leave much room for, what's the word, well-being. Yes, that's it. If you get sick, sometimes you still train. If you feel sad, you still train. If your foot hurts, you put some tape on it and you still train. In the old days, if a worker got tired, they sat under a tree for a while. Here, if you sit under a tree, someone will drag you back inside and tell you to practice your harmony lines. The companies say it's for perfection. They say audiences deserve the best. They want the singing to be perfect, the dancing to be perfect, the speaking to be perfect, even the way you drink water on camera to be perfect. They will teach you to drink from a bottle without making a loud gulp sound, because maybe one fan out there doesn't like gulping noises. They think about everything, and to be fair, it works. When the idols finally debut, they're like shiny statues that can sing and dance and smile without messing up once. But here's where the fiasco part comes in. As the young people say, some folks look at all this and think it's too much. They say it's like taking a flower and pressing it between the pages of a book to keep it perfect forever, but the flower is no longer alive. They say individuality disappears. When you see a group of these idols, you might not be able to tell them apart right away. Same hair colors, same clothes, same smiles, like cookies from the same cutter. In the old days, a singer might sing off-key now and then, but at least you knew they were real. Now it's so polished that sometimes people wonder if there's anything human left under all that shine. And the pressure, oh, the pressure is something else. You're not just training your body, you're retraining your whole life to fit inside a company's idea of what an idol should be. No dating, no eating certain foods, no talking about certain things, no showing your real moods unless the company says it's okay. If you slip up, the punishment can be severe. Maybe they cut your lines in a song. Maybe they push you to the back of the dance formation. Maybe they even kick you out. Years of work gone in a moment. Now, back in our times, a mistake on stage was almost expected. The microphone might stop working, the guitar string might snap, the singer might forget the words. People laughed, clapped, and carried on. But in this system, one wrong move might follow you forever. And that's not even counting the fact that training costs money, sometimes a lot of it. There are stories of trainees leaving with debt because the company spent money on their training, and they didn't debut. Imagine being 20 years old, with no diploma, no job, and a bill from the place that kept you dancing in a room for years. It's not all bad, of course. Some idols say they love the discipline, the teamwork, the chance to be part of something bigger. They say they meet lifelong friends, learn skills, and gain confidence. But even those idols sometimes admit that the system is not built for personal comfort. It's built for output, like a factory that makes music instead of shoes. And if one shoe doesn't fit right, they don't fix it, they replace it. The robotic system might impress the world, but it also hides the toll it takes on the people inside it. When you see them on stage, you see the shine, the perfect moves, the rehearsed expressions. What you don't see is the years of exhaustion, the bruised knees, the nights when they wonder if they're good enough. And maybe that's the point. If you saw all that, the magic might fade. The companies don't want that. They want the illusion, and they've gotten very, very good at making it. So you know when you got your favorite music boy or girl on the stage, jumping around, singing, and looking all shiny and pretty. And then all of a sudden, one day, poof, they gotta go to the army. Like not pretend army, the real one, with uniforms, shouting men, and no fancy hair dye. That's what happens in that big faraway place called South Korea, where the music is all pop and the dancing is so perfect it makes your knees hurt just looking at it. They got this rule there that says, hey, if you are a man and you're between about 20 and 30 years old, you gotta put on the soldier clothes and train and run and do the army stuff. Doesn't matter if you're famous, rich, or if your smile makes thousands of people cry. You still go. It's like the world's least fun surprise party. Now, the fans, you know, those folks who scream so loud you can hear them across oceans, they dante take it so nice. One day their favorite idol is waving and singing on TV. Next day he's got his hair shaved off and is holding a gun but not shooting anything yet, 'cause training. And these fans, they get all dramatic. Some start writing long letters online like, "We will wait for you no matter what, even if it takes 600 years. Others cry into their pillows. Some even say, "Maybe we all join the army too, so we can still see him," which you know doesn't work, but they think it's romantic or something. The reason this is such a big deal is because K-pop groups are like machines. Every piece has to work together. You take one piece out, the machine stops, or at least gets all wobbly. If you got a group of 7 boys and one goes to the army, now you got 6 left. And maybe one of those 6 is busy doing his own thing, so now there's only 5. Before you know it, they're on stage holding microphones, but singing into empty air where the missing ones should be. Some groups try to keep going while one is gone, but it never feels the same to the fans. They say things like, "It's like eating bread without butter," or "It's like watching a play but the main actor is invisible." And the companies, oh boy, they hate this. They make all their money from selling music, concerts, and those tiny photo cards that fans trade like gold coins. If an idol leaves for 2 years, that's 2 years of lost money. You can't just put another guy in and hope no one notices. Fans notice everything. If you tried that, they'd probably hunt you down with fan banners and angry tweets. So what companies do is sometimes plan a hiatus, which is a fancy word for, we're not doing much because our star is gone. Other times, they make the other members do solo projects. One guy acts in a drama, another one releases a song alone. Another one maybe starts cooking on a YouTube channel. They spread them out like butter on too much bread, hoping fans will still stick around until the soldier comes back. Now, here's the thing. Enlistment isn't just walking in and saying, "Hello, I'm here to protect the country." There's a whole process. First they announce it to the fans, usually in some big heartfelt message. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they smile, sometimes they do both at the same time, which is weird but dramatic. Then they cut their hair short. Not just a little trim, but the kind that makes you go, "Who is that?" Fans often freak out at this part, posting thousands of photos of the idol's last long-haired day, like it's a funeral. After that, the idol goes into training for a few weeks, learning how to salute, run, shoot, and follow orders. Then they get assigned to a unit. From there, they're basically gone from public life until their service is over. You might get 1 or 2 letters or photos if you're lucky, but most of the time, it's radio silence. It's also a strange time for the group's image. Some fans say enlistment makes idols look more manly and mature. Others just miss the colorful outfits and silly variety show moments. Media will write articles about how the idol is doing in the army, sometimes even about what he eats in the cafeteria. And you better believe fans eat that up like free candy. There's also this funny thing where sometimes multiple members from the same group try to enlist around the same time. They figure if we all go together, we can come back together. That way, the group's break is shorter overall. But it also means for a while the group is completely gone from the stage, which makes the fans sad all at once instead of spread out over years. It's like ripping the band-aid off in one painful go. And then of course, you got the conspiracy thinkers. They'll say, "Oh, he didn't really want to go now, but the company forced him," or "They're only announcing it now to distract from a scandal." Half the time it's just nonsense, but it keeps the fan chatter going. Sometimes, though, idols do try to delay enlistment, like if they're in the middle of a huge tour or filming something big. The government lets them push it back a little, but not forever. Eventually, the letter comes, and off they go. So, if you think about it, enlistment is like this big unavoidable storm in the K-pop world. Everyone knows it's coming, but when it hits, it still knocks people over. The idol loses his stage for a while. The fans lose their idol, the group loses a piece of itself, and the whole time everyone's just counting down days until the return, when the soldier walks back onto the stage and tries to sing and dance like nothing happened. Sometimes the comeback is huge, with tears and fireworks. Other times it's quieter, like slipping back into an old jacket. But no matter how it goes, that gap in the middle, that silence, is something the fans never forget. The military has always cared about how people see it. In the past, leaders thought that if the army looked strong and clean, more people would want to join. They also believed that showing smiling soldiers made the public feel safe. But sometimes, these ideas came out in strange ways. One of those ways was using famous singers to make the army look better. Today, in South Korea, the military uses K-pop stars when they serve their time. The idea is simple. People love the singers, so if the singers look happy in the army must be a good place. When a male K-pop idol turns a certain age, he has to serve in the military. This is not a choice, it is the law. In the past, this made some fans upset. They would cry because their favorite singer was gone for almost 2 years. This was bad for the military's image, because it made it look like the army was stealing someone that people loved. So the people in charge came up with a plan. They said, "What if we show these singers doing fun things in uniform? Then the fans will see them and feel better." It sounded smart at the time, so the military began letting news cameras take photos of idols in training, smiling and waving. They also let them join military bands or work in areas where they could sing at events. The public would see pictures of their favorite star holding a guitar or standing in front of a microphone with a military patch on his arm. This way, the singer was still an idol, but now also a soldier. To the people in charge, this was perfect. They thought fans would say, "Wow, the army must be great if my favorite singer is happy there." Sometimes the military even organized events where these idols could perform for both soldiers and civilians. It was not a concert with lights and big stages, but it was enough to remind fans that their star was still active. The military would broadcast these moments on television or put them in magazines. The plan worked well with some fans. They saw their idol looking healthy and smiling, so they felt less worried. They might even feel proud that he was serving his country. Recruitment was another reason for this. The military needed young men to join, but not everyone wanted to go. It was hard work, and people knew it. But if a famous singer looked like he was having a good time, it gave the impression that service was not so bad. A teenager who loved K-pop might think, if my favorite singer can do it, maybe I can too. Even if that was not true in reality, the image stuck in people's minds. From the outside it might look silly. People in uniforms are supposed to represent discipline and defense, not entertainment. But the military saw the value of soft power. Instead of showing only tanks, rifles, and tough drills, they also showed handsome men in perfect haircuts singing songs. It was a strange mix, but it made the army seem friendlier. In the past, some thought this was enough to change public opinion. Of course, not everyone believed it. Some fans could tell that the smiling faces were for show. They knew the army was still strict and demanding, but the military counted on the fact that not everyone thinks too deeply about these things. Many people just saw the pictures and felt good. That was the goal, to create a quick, positive feeling. Sometimes the effort went further. When idols were in military service, the media would get stories about how well they were doing. A singer might be praised for being a model soldier or for winning a small award during training. These stories would appear in newspapers and online articles. They were meant to show that not only could idols survive military life, but they could excel in it. This was more than just public relations. It was a way to turn a possible negative into a positive. In earlier decades, armies and other countries also tried to make themselves look better using famous people. Actors or athletes would pose with soldiers, or even wear uniforms for photo shoots. But in South Korea, the system of mandatory service meant they had a constant supply of celebrities. Every year, more idols would reach the age to serve, and the cycle would repeat. Each new group of stars became another chance to show the military in a good light. It was not just about recruiting soldiers, it was also about national pride. If a beloved singer wore the uniform, it reminded people that everyone had to serve, no matter how rich or famous. This could make the public feel that the system was fair. The image of a celebrity cleaning a rifle or marching in formation sent a message. We are all the same when it comes to defending our country. At least, that was the idea people wanted to believe. Looking back, some of the thinking seems clumsy. Leaders assumed that putting a famous face in uniform would magically make the army look better. They did not think much about whether this would actually change anyone's mind for the long term. They were focused on the short-term smiles and headlines. They liked the way the photos looked and the way fans reacted in the moment. Still, the practice has not gone away. Even today, whenever a popular idol begins service, there is a flood of images and stories. Some show him at the enlistment ceremony, others show him doing basic training, and later there are shots of him in a band or on a small stage. The military keeps feeding the public these images because it still believes in the old idea that fame and uniforms together create good feelings. In this way, the use of K-pop idols in the military is both modern and old-fashioned. It is modern because it uses pop culture, fan loyalty, and media to shape opinion. It is old-fashioned because it relies on a very simple belief that people will see something nice and think everything must be nice too. This belief has been around for a long time, and back then, it sounded like enough. People thought image was the same as truth. They thought that if the uniform was neat and the smile was wide, the message had to be good. The so-called Great K-Pop Fiasco wasn't just one bad night or one wrong move. Folks keep saying it was a single disaster, like some concert gone wrong. But if you ask around, you'll hear a dozen different stories, all mashed together. It's like a stew where no one knew what they were cooking. So they just threw in everything from politics to tragedy to plain old bad planning. And somehow, it all got blamed on K-pop. There was this time, years back, when the government got mad about a singer who didn't T-wave the flag, right? Or maybe said something about taxes. No one remembers exactly. The whole thing turned into a boycott. Radio stations stopped playing certain songs, big shows got cancelled, and even fan events were suddenly postponed because safety reasons. But when you looked closer, those safety reasons were usually just an excuse to keep certain groups quiet. It was like the music itself had done something wrong, and folks in power liked reminding everyone that entertainment wasn't above the rules. Then you got the accidents. These weren't just small mistakes, we're talking real disasters. There was that outdoor stage collapse when the wind got too strong, though some folks still insist it wasn't even windy that day. Another time, a festival ran out of security, and the crowd pushed forward until people got hurt. Everyone blamed the organizers, but the organizers blamed the weather, the venue, and even the fans. It turned into a game of hot potato with the truth. And while people were arguing, more shows kept happening like nothing was wrong. Mix in the military stuff, and it gets messier in this country. Young men have to serve in the military, even if they're the biggest pop stars in the world. That meant whole groups would disappear for a year or two. Some fans called it patriotic, others called it a waste. And then came the rumor stories about certain idols getting special treatment or skipping service for medical reasons that were never quite explained. The tabloids ate it up. Suddenly, serving in the military wasn't just a duty, it was a test of loyalty, and every move a singer made was judged against it. And we can't forget the planning failures. If there was a way to mess up logistics, someone found it. Tickets that sold out in minutes but never showed up in the mail. Venues double booked so that a rehearsal for one show ran into a performance for another. At one big event, the lights went out right before the main act, and no one could figure out how to turn them back on for nearly an hour. People in the crowd kept singing anyway, which some say was heartwarming, but most say was just awkward. The social debates made it even stranger. Everyone had an opinion, and no one wanted to back down. Some thought K-pop was getting too flashy, spending more time on costumes and makeup than music. Others said it was becoming the country's greatest cultural export, so it needed government protection. The argument spilled onto TV talk shows, where old men in suits would lecture teenagers about real music while never having heard a single song, and the teenagers would roll their eyes, but the ratings for those shows kept going up. One time, a big awards ceremony got dragged into the mess. The lineup was full of stars, but half of them pulled out at the last minute. Some said it was because the host had insulted a popular group the year before. Others claimed the government told them not to appear. In the end, the ceremony went ahead, but it looked more like a school talent show than a national celebration. The empty seats in the front rows were impossible to hide, no matter how many camera tricks they tried. And then there were the fans. If you think they were just innocent bystanders, you'd be wrong. Fandom wars broke out online every time a scandal hit, with one group blaming another for spreading rumors. People would post receipts, screenshots of private messages or leaked schedules, and then delete them before anyone could check if they were real. Some fans even showed up at events just to boo the rival group. The press loved it, because now every story had a villain, even if it changed week to week. Over time, all these pieces, boycotts, accidents, military drama, botched events, and loud arguments got woven into one big tale. The older folks tell it like it's a warning about letting pop culture get too big for its boots. The younger ones treat it like a soap opera that never ends. And somewhere in the middle are the people who were actually there, still trying to explain that it wasn't just one fiasco but a whole string of them, each making the next one worse. What makes it all so ridiculous is how none of these events seem to teach anyone a lesson. You'd think after the first few accidents, someone would check the stages better. You'd think after the boycotts, they'd find a way to keep politics out of concerts. You'd think after all the arguments, people would agree on what K-pop should stand for. But no, every time something happened, it just became part of the ongoing mess. And with every retelling, the details shift. Sometimes the military scandal comes before the stage collapse. Sometimes the fan wars are the main story. Sometimes the whole thing starts because of a single offhand comment at a press conference. It depends who's telling it and how much they remember or think they remember. That's how the Great K-Pop Fiasco turned into a patchwork of half-true stories and badly remembered facts. It's not just about one day, one stage, or one group. It's about how all these blunders and fights got stitched together, until no one could tell where one ended and the next began.